When you stop working and you're no longer getting that monthly paycheck, you want to know how to convert your retirement savings into an income that you can depend upon. Well, guess what? Financial planners only use two methods. That's right. No matter what they call it, it ultimately boils down to just two methods. So if you're visiting financial planners or you're researching doing it yourself, it's going to boil down to these two methods no matter what they call it. Hey everyone, I'm Nick Davis, founder of Brindle Bay Wealth Management, and I'm here to show you how to master your retirement money. And before we get started, if you enjoy this video and this content, consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video so that other people like yourself can find it. We're talking about spending your investments in retirement. And retirement planning is agonizingly stressful and complex. People say that there's three risks that they're mostly concerned about. Risk number one, running out of money too soon. Risk number two, the market volatility and needing to depend upon the money when it's down. And then the third risk is unexpected surprise large purchases that pop up. Not to mention that, but we have to manage those risks for 25 to 30 years. And you might be asking the question, how do I manage these risks and take income in retirement? Or you might be asking, how is my advisor or planner going to manage these risks for me? And so we're going to talk about the only two ways that it's ultimately done. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret that virtually every financial planner must use when they're creating a financial retirement income plan for the purpose of you being able to identify which one most suits you and which one maybe you're being presented with. So let's get started. All right, those two methods would be called the probability-based method or safety first. And basically everything else is ultimately a variable of or a gradient of being probability-based or more safety first-based. So the most extreme probability-based would be called safe withdrawal rate, and that's where you just take a percentage out of your stock and bond portfolio every month or every year and adjust it for inflation. And there's simulations that are done that basically maximize the probability of success, which is not running out of money, regardless of the sequence of returns and volatility experience, meaning you live through the volatility, but you take that safe withdrawal number. Now, on the safety first based, it's more of a let's purchase secure, stable, sustainable income that usually comes from a bond ladder or an insurance company like an annuity. And let's make sure we buy all of our core needs in income and we minimize our wants, okay? So this is just the difference is that in this case, we are transferring our risk. So here we can see safety first. We've got our Social Security and we're transferring our risk for our discretion, all of our actual core needs. So our core needs to an insurance company. And we're either getting a bond ladder or an annuity ladder or an annuity of some sort with an insurance company. And then the rest of this percentage up here goes into stocks and bonds usually, and all the discretionary needs are met through a less secure method. And then in the probability-based, we are doing market-based, and we're doing a safe withdrawal amount. So we have Social Security as our base, and instead of doing this here, where we're getting our needs covered through something secure, we're basically putting our money into stock and bond portfolio, diversified, and we are withdrawing that, what is known as a safe withdrawal percentage. We're not going to argue what is a safe withdrawal percentage here, though I'm writing 4% here. But basically, let's say it's 4% and also going to include a inflation adjustment every single year. So meaning, hey, we can take this percentage out of our $1 million, let's say, and adjust it for inflation and reach the goal of age 90 or 95 having our needs met. That's the two primary differences between safety first and probability based. Remember, everything else can be a gradient of it. So there's pros and cons to both, and we're going to talk about the most extremes, these two extremes here, so you can see kind of just the cut and dry. So the pro of doing a safety first method is that it's stable. Okay, it's stable. It's a stable, consistent payment covering your needs. You're transferring risk to the insurance company. And so it's no longer a market risk, it's an insurance company risk. The con or the downside is it tends to be inflexible because you really, there's rules on the money with those types of investments and products. It tends to struggle with inflation. And yes, you can build inflation protection into some of these things. However, most people who want to cover all of their needs through this method end up with very little left for the market. So there's very little left, and then they cover less of their discretionary needs, which means they hit less goals. And then one last one here is complex. Annuities are very numerous. There's a lot of them. They're not easy to understand. The most simple annuities are easy to understand, but then they get more complicated from there. So ultimately, there is a big upside, which is the pro of having that stable income, but then there's the con of it being inflexible, having some inflation challenges, being complex, and maybe reaching less goals. Now, the probability-based has some pros and cons. So first of all, the pro is that it kind of has inflation built in because you're usually keeping a healthy amount of stocks, and that tends to outpace inflation. And then because of that reason, hypothetically, you'll reach more goals. You tend to be more flexible because you're not in some type of product that says you can't do something. So it tends to be a little bit more flexible. And then you could leave a larger legacy because you're not in just fixed income. The downside is that what if the market underperforms for a couple of years in a row, right? That's a question. And people who believe in probability-based tend to trust the market and believe that underperformance won't be consistent and that there's other methods to alleviate that, or that in reality, underperformance has already been figured out when the safe withdrawal number has been calculated, which I don't think is wrong. And then another con is that studies are showing that they're underspending. They're underspending right now because maybe they're concerned about what's going to happen, right? So are they really better off having the flexibility is the question. And then people don't follow the rules, meaning you got to follow the rules. Well, let's just say there's a risk that you won't follow the rules. And the rules a lot of times are, if you're taking 4% out, when the market does really well and gives you a 15% return, you don't take the extra money out. And you let that, cook into the equation, so to speak. And then there's let's just kind of meet somewhere in the middle here and say that there's a combination approach. And so with a combination approach, you've got your Social Security, and then maybe instead of meeting all your needs through, an annuity or bonds, you can meet some of them. So let's just say some of them are the safety first idea. Safety first. So this maybe has been transferred to an insurance carrier. And then the rest of the money, like a larger percentage of the money, is actually in the market, okay? And now you've got the best of both worlds, the pros and cons of both, really. So there's really no right or wrong way to do this. It comes down to a matter of philosophy. Usually a group or an individual will just adopt their way of doing it. But I think it's helpful for you to understand that ultimately it's going to be a gradient of one of those two methods, no matter what they call it. So why is this important to you? Why should you know that there is a safety first approach and a probability approach? It's important for you to know the difference between the two different methods so that you can identify what it is you're researching, what somebody may be presenting you with, and what you're most comfortable with. And it can be confusing because sometimes it's called bond ladder, sometimes it's called an annuity ladder, sometimes it's called a safety first approach or a probability approach, a safe withdrawal rate, a bucket approach, a buffered approach, you name it. But ultimately, you just want to understand it and believe that it's going to work for you. So let me give you a few tips on how to narrow your focus. So first of all, if you're going to be taking a small percentage of your retirement savings, say you're only taking $20,000 or $30,000 a year off of $1 million, well, relative to the safe withdrawal rate, that's kind of small. So you would lean more towards the probability approach and maybe not so much towards the safety first approach. You should also be aware that if you put too much money into the safety first approach, you may lack access to cash and capital. You also may struggle with keeping up with inflation so that you can maintain your lifestyle, buy new appliances, continue to go on vacations. And so you want to be careful of that. You should also consider that Social Security, and if you have a large pension, let's say, those sort of count towards your safety first approach already. So that should be considered, because if you have a lot of that relative to how much you're going to be spending, you may lean away from the safety first approach because you've already got a lot of stable income. Lastly, you want to make sure you understand what you're getting yourself into, especially with the safety first approach. There can be some confusion around exactly what it is you're doing. And a lot of times people are confused about what their financial plan can and cannot do. I personally lean towards a combination approach. However, as a financial planner, it's important for me to stay objective and to also accommodate people who want that safety first approach, or if they also instead want that probability-based approach. Ultimately, you want to be working with somebody who understands these different approaches and is willing to step outside of their personal bias and give you something that you can stick with for the long term. So as you can see, this is a very individual decision, and hopefully this video helps you to identify both of those different leanings, so that no matter what the name of the retirement income planning method is that you're looking at, that you're facing, you can identify if it's going to be a good fit for you. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe so that other people can find this content. And lastly, if you'd like to check out the way that we help people master their money during retirement, take a look at brindleandbay.com.